I'm ready to slash and burn.
No quarter. I am going to be uncomfortable and all over you from start to finish.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Giant Nut edition of BattleBots Breakdown, where we are going to talk about the last couple weeks of BattleBots, which I will say have been pretty exciting. I'm sure you would agree, Ashley.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was definitely a season worth talking about, and the last episode was like better than I ever could have imagined.
Yes, I have heard many say the best episode of BattleBots ever, and I would say that could be accurate. So we're gonna jump back though to the previous week to find out how we got to this last week. And the first match that we're going to talk about is one that gave me an absolute heart attack, and that's Minotaur versus Malice. Like, it's funny because watching it, even though I knew the result, I still was like, oh my god, the whole time. There is like one little thing could have changed and Malice would have won that match. I mean, they just took it to Minotaur like you don't normally see people do to Minotaur. And it was, I'm sure, very scary for Ribbot, but they were able to kind of turn that around and get the win in the end. But man, that was crazy.
Yeah, it was nuts to watch Minotaur go flying like across the whole box and just land on your head, and you're like, wait, whoa. Like, Malice has the upper hand right out of the gate, and they delivered like right up front, and that 60-pound drum and running that heavy weapon was so worth it. And unfortunately, like Daniel was able to counter eventually and get some like huge hits and deliver all the power that he needed to deliver. But it was, in the beginning, I was like, is Malice gonna take down Minotaur? It's like, my bracket busted already? Like, oh, we're not even gonna get that far. Good job, Ash. Like, but like, it was crazy. It was such a good match.
Yes, and after that match, like, it is about freaking time that Bunny gets some credit, and Team Malice gets some credit that they deserve, because that is a good robot. Like, to even do anything close to that to Minotaur, like, that's impressive. So they should feel very good about that, for what they have going into the next season.
Yeah, literally. It should be really interesting, especially with some of the additions that she's made to her team in the off season. Like, she's added some really smart brain power, and like finishing up with such a strong showing against Minotaur, and then adding in those like secret weapons. Like, she's gonna be really, really hard to beat next season, without a doubt in my mind.
Yes. So then we had Monsoon versus Sawblaze, and again, when you know what's going to happen to some extent, but it didn't make it any more difficult to see Monsoon go from what I would say is like the high of their career in BattleBots, to losing a match like that. But Sawblaze, like, JMO came prepared. And anybody that knows anything about JMO, like, it's the whole learning from your previous matches. And if you beat him before, you can bet that he's going to try and make sure that that doesn't ever happen again. So, I mean, I knew what he was going to be bringing to the table. And as amazing as Monsoon is, like, it was an uphill battle for them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, in my head, like after this match, I thought to myself, I was like, is JMO gonna win the giant nut? Like, is that what's about to happen? Like, it really like started to make me think, like, okay, like he is 100% prepared for every situation this season. Like, he has worked obviously like for super, super long, and it is literally paying off, and it is showing hands down in every single match, and it is crazy. But like, good on Monsoon for being able to take it to Sawblaze a little bit too, and like make him have to think outside of the box, like having to add those extra attachments and like making him like really use that power and brain power and smarts, but like he did it effectively, and it shows why JMO is JMO and why we hold him to such a high level, because he's done the work and he knows what he's doing. Like there's nothing stopping him. And like that, after this, I was just kind of like, all right, maybe it is JMO's year for sure.
Yeah, and it's funny because for fans that pay great attention to detail, after the episode was over, they kind of ran this like fallen teams, type of thing, and they showed all the teams that had got knocked out in the episode, and they showed a clip of Tom Brewster interviewing when they interviewed Monsoon, and he said something to the effect of that, like, I hope JMO wins the giant nut because then I can say I lost to the person who won the giant nut. And I'm watching that and I'm like, anybody who's watching this, BattleBots is giving you a big clue right here what's about to happen. Right. So I just thought that was kind of, interesting that they showed that.
Yeah, it was a match, and like I hope Monsoon comes back because they showed so much this year and they were such a fun team to watch, and like they really had it together, like without a doubt.
Yes. So yes, please, Team Monsoon, please come back. That would make my heart so happy. So Hydra versus Whiplash, and it was a tough one for me because I thought to myself, with like Whiplash's design and everything else, and like Matt's a great driver and they're good at, getting control and stuff like that, they might be able to do something here, even though Jake's as good as he is at the ground game and all of that stuff. And Whiplash had been on such a run, kind of clawing their way back into things after going 0-2 to start the season. But I mean, Jake, Hydra's been looking good this season, and Jake just did what he does and managed to take Whiplash out.
Yeah, I mean, Jake has that ground game and he really is super unstoppable. Like you get under a Whiplash like within the first like few seconds and send them on two little flips right out the gate, you're kind of like, okay, I know I have the upper hand and now I know what I have to do to win the match, and like I'm going to continue to be as effective and as strategic as I have always been and be able to deliver it. And like to see Whiplash like having to like their armor must have just jingled enough that it got caught, and then like to having to pop your own armor off to be able to get your like arm to function again, it kind of stinks. And you're like, all right, now I'm a sitting duck. Like at this point, like I know that if I hit a certain level, like I'm not coming back over again. And Jake plays to his strengths. That's why he is as good as he is, and like he's effective, and it shows every single match.
Yes, definitely. So we went from that to one of my favorite matches of the episode, which was Ribbot versus Black Dragon. And, like, I know a lot of people doubted Ribbot, despite they're like, 1-3, whatever, like you don't understand how good this robot is if you think that them being 1-3 means that they're not going to be able to do anything in the tournament. Like, it is an amazing robot. I may be a little bit biased because, David let me drive his robot, but it's so freaking good. And they did things to Black Dragon that just like, I mean, they just walloped them. And I mean, that's a good team. That's a really good team. And I thought it was an amazing match.
Yeah, it definitely shows like the fortitude of Ribbot and like why they deserve to make it into the tournament. Like everybody says 1-3, like, oh, they should have put 2-2 over. But like, no, like David, like there was a photo circulating on Facebook this year and it was like back where it all began. And it was 8 years ago. And it was JMO, David Jin, and Lucy Dew. And it's like, it really goes to show like David's been working as long as a lot of these guys, and like they have the team behind them and they're able to, like, they went from going 1-3 to 0 and like 3-0 like in their run like towards the tournament, and it shows like really effectively, and like they delivered some serious power. And I wonder how badly like Black Dragon was rocked for, obviously after the Riptide match and like all that stuff. So it's like or not Riptide, but like whatever, but like you really wonder like how much that played into the next match and like how much damage like maybe they did not able to recover.
Right. I think it, well, they did fight them before, but it was Ripperoni was the match before that. Yeah, when they were on fire, and I mean, who knows?
Yeah, like fire's not fun. Like I've seen so many robots like be functional after fire, but even though like you were still like you're still on fire, like you still have damage, like it's still effective. Like
Yes, absolutely. So then and mind you, again, like I don't know for sure like what order these actually were on in the show. This is the order that I'm going with. So Riptide versus Hypershock. Now you know, I will give, you know, some degree of credit because in that match, obviously the hit where Hypershock hit the ceiling was just insane. I've never seen anything like that from that kind of impact. And I mean, the fact that they could still drive after that was also pretty incredible. You know, it was definitely quite a beat down. I don't know that I've seen like it just in my memory that I've seen Hypershock wrecked like that. They're usually the one wrecking people. But yeah, I mean, it was a very destructive match, you know, obviously. And I thought that, you know, like again with the foreshadowing that before the match, Will said, you know, something about like Riptide getting humbled. And, you know, I'm like, well, it may not be you that's doing the humbling, but it's coming. So, you know, I'm sure that Hypershock would have loved that to go another way. I mean, I think a lot of people have talked about the very beginning of the match, that the way that Will kind of pulled up on them, and that wasn't necessarily the best position that they wanted to put Hypershock in. But like, you know, it's stuff happens, and you know, it doesn't necessarily go your way. And you know, Riptide obviously kept up their streak.
yeah, it was definitely a destructive match to say the least. Like, and that's a lot of weight, that's a lot of impact, and that's a lot of height to fly. Like when like Will jokes after the match, like, "Oh, I was just gonna go hide in the ceiling." Like legitimately, I'm like, "Well, what had happened if your fork did get caught in the ceiling and you're like Hypershock was just like dangling? Like, how ridiculous would that have been?" But like, that's insane. Like, you have to give it to the powerful weapon that is Riptide, and like they showed why in this match. Like they have been on the destructive path that they've been on, and you know, Will was just like, "Yep, they did it. They're powerful. They deserve that," because like it showed why it was why it is why who they are, and unfortunately they continue to piss people off, but like, yep, you did it. Your robot's powerful. Good job.
Yep, exactly. And speaking of destructive, so I've said this for a while, and I say it at every opportunity. Copperhead is a freaking destructive robot. You know, I like they need to absolutely be at the top of that conversation, and it didn't show, I think, any better than their fight against Endgame, where the whole time, like once pieces started coming off of Endgame, I was just like, get them all off. You have to take every piece off. And I was just rooting for them to keep doing it. So, you know, I don't recall Endgame ever receiving that kind of destruction ever by any bot. So like Copperhead has so much to be proud of with what they were able to do, because I mean they destroyed that robot and they did it the right way.
Yeah, I was super hyped up after this match. Obviously, like I love Copperhead. I love how excited Chad gets after the match. Like it really just brings me so much joy. Like I literally can't wait to see Chad and June at NHRL, because like I just need to thank him for bringing me so much joy after all of these matches. Like, but to see 16 keys and 2 forks just fly off the front of a robot is so impressive. And like when they show it after the fact, and that I like really like that a little bit of an after show where you like really get to see like the damage up close, because that's not something like you get to see every day. And it literally looked like Copperhead was like standing the front of Endgame. Like it was absolutely incredible. Like that little robot packs so much power, and it's so incredible. And I have loved watching it all season long.
Yes, absolutely. Like it is going to be a force to be reckoned with next season. So yeah, like scary. And so then we have Witch Doctor versus Lockjaw, which I am still like floored that this was the first time that those two robots have ever fought, because I'm like, how is that possible? But I mean, they just hadn't got matched up before, and they happened to find themselves fighting each other. And it must have been such a like joy for Andrea and Mike to fight him. And like, I mean, it's like they talked about taking down a legend, but like they're legends in their own right for how long they've been doing it. So it's just two legendary robots and builders going up against each other. And it wasn't really a surprise to me that Witch Doctor won this one, because you knew that they were going to be bringing it for this season. They want that win so bad. But like it was a good showing. And I think that Team Lockjaw should be proud of what they were able to do this year in comparison to what the prior year was for them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like this was like such like a cool match to watch, because like it really, like when they said that these two teams had never fought, it was like, really? Like it's been a really long time and they've never ever met in the bracket. Like, okay, like when you talk like BattleBots royalty, like these people have been around for like ever, and like they're both so respected in the game and everything that they do. And like to be able to watch a match like that is almost like such an honor, because you're like, wow, you really don't get to see like everything that these people have worked for so long, like coming to a head, and like Witch Doctor coming out and like automatically taking the front wheel off. I'm like, yep, okay, yep, that's kind of how I expected this to go. Like, but like Donald turned his season around, like he was doing phenomenal, and it was so good to see him make it far and like put out showings every single time. Like I loved it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so then the final match of last week, Huge versus Mad Catter, and you knew that this one was going to be a crazy match. I mean, like there's all this secret Mad Catter weapon stuff going on, which Huge took off pretty quickly. Jonathan decided to box rush, which you never see Huge box rush. That's not a thing that happens, but it was fun to see. And yeah, I mean, like Huge looked great. It just shows how dialed in they are this season. Of course, like Calvin did a good job driving and really tried to hang in there. But Huge has been pretty unstoppable.
Yeah, like obviously I was there for this match. I can be heard in the audience. So like the joy that I got to like just watch this match again. Like I remember sitting in the audience, and I was sitting with Ed from NHRL during this point, and we were literally sitting there like, who do we root for? What do we do? How are we supposed to handle this? And the people next to us were like, are you guys okay? And we were like, well, you see, like, and then like we had to like explain NHRL, and we were like, that's like family down there, like we don't know what to do. Like we were like, go everyone, like nuts. And then like just like I've said it 100 times and I'll say it again, like I love seeing Huge be so effective and really show like why they have continued to innovate everything that they've continued to do. Like I cannot give them enough props, and I just love it. Like Calvin and Martin are so smart and so strategic, and thought that they could, take a little bit of out of Huge by adding attachments, but Huge continued to show why they've been so effective and like why they are continuing to dominate and like have not lost.
Yes. And as we know, that streak didn't die, but we'll get into that shortly. So now we're going to talk about this past week's episode, which Oh my gosh. And I can definitely add some color to, you know, some of these fights because I was of course there for all of them. But the first one that they showed was Sawblaze versus Minotaur. And so I have to tell the story that like I was dying inside because at the time that this fight happened, I was in the pits. And I really had no firm grasp on like what the rules were going to be for like my allowance back there. And I was terrified that if I left, that I wouldn't be allowed back in. So this match was happening and I'm like screaming inside because I'm like, I want to be in there for this. But I was in the pits watching it on a monitor and just like dying the entire time. So, you know, like it was one of the best fights that I've ever seen. It was such an amazing back and forth because, you know, in the very beginning, I really thought, you know, I'm like, I don't know how Minotaur is going to come back, and Minotaur kept coming back. They were on fire again, because that's just a thing that happens between these two robots now. And even despite being on fire, Minotaur was still battling until they got to the point where they got put up on the screws. And I'm not sure if like that did something else or if the fire just finally got to something that, you know, caused a problem and they just stopped moving. And that was heartbreaking. I mean, so happy for JMO, obviously, but heartbreaking to see Minotaur go out that way. Like, I honestly, I was wishing that it would at least go the 3 minutes and go to a judge's decision and not just have the robot die like that. But it was definitely a great thing to see Daniel smiling during the interview, because I know how, like, that team, again, like there's a handful of teams that just, you know, that every year they put in everything and hope that it's their year. And I really hope someday soon it is Minotaur's year. But so happy for JMO, because I mean, I know he really obviously wanted to win that one as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It was an incredible like match all around. Just to be able to watch like Minotaur, like you when a robot can still function for that long on fire, like you know that they're doing something correct. Like you don't see that. Like usually a robot's fire and it just dies, whether its battery blows up or the weapon ESC like lights on fire, whatever it might be, like it just dies. And Minotaur took it to Sawblaze while they were on fire and basically were like, okay, whatever. Like, we don't care. Like, here I am. I'm still going to get my counter shots. Like, I'm going to do everything that I can, like, and try my hardest. And Daniel never gives up. And, like, in the end, like, it was good to see him smiling because, like, when he came out of that tunnel, I was like, holy moly. Like, that is a, like, it literally was in the zone like well before he even walked out of the tunnel, and you could see like how much it meant to him and like how much like he was concentrating and knowing, like trying to figure out like how he was going to beat someone so effective as JMO. But like Jameson is prepared. He knows what he's doing. He's been there before. As soon as Minotaur was upside down, he knew that he had to get him into a position where he could take that shot, and he took that shot and continued to deliver that power. And like it was such an incredible match. And like that was how the night started. And I was like, okay, we're in for a show. Like, let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, sadly, obviously, like I didn't know this at the event when I was there, but watching everything back and watching like the earlier matches in the tournament, based on how Sawblaze had looked so far in the tournament and how Minotaur looked in the tournament, I had a feeling that like, you know, even if I didn't know what the result was, I would have known how that was going to go because Minotaur hadn't looked the same in the tournament matches as they had looked during the regular fight nights. They just didn't quite look to the level that they were. And so, you know, and obviously Sawblaze had looked freaking amazing. So, you know, it's just it's the way that it goes. And hopefully Minotaur comes back and just like does the thing. Like that's all that I want. That would, that would just make my day. But so another thing that made my day that I was in the arena for was Huge versus Witch Doctor. And I know you mentioned like you screaming. I was screaming. And like, no, nothing against Andrea and Mike. Like, I love Witch Doctor. It's always been one of my favorite robots, but you do not see that happen to Witch Doctor. Like, nobody does that to Witch Doctor. And so just the fact that it was happening and that it was huge doing it, I was freaking out. And you know, like, one thing I have to point out is, especially in this episode, probably more than any other episode this season in general, I think we've seen so many smart strategies and decisions by team captains just on full display. And this was, you know, one of those where he was talking in the interview before the match about exactly what his plan was and his strategy, you know, to just let Witch Doctor go into the weapon. And that's exactly what they did. And he immediately broke their weapon, and then proceeded to dismantle Witch Doctor piece by piece. So like, he had a plan, he executed that plan, and it paid off perfectly.
Yeah, I was like screaming on my couch during this match. Like, I was so hyped up. Like, I couldn't even, like, I can't even like put it into words. Like, I don't know how many times I cried during the last episode, but like tears of joy like streaming down my face every time Huge won. Like, I was so excited. Like, you don't see like the rib cage and like all of the armor like really ever come off of Witch Doctor. They've left every match literally almost unscathed every single time. And to see Huge deliver those hits and be able to really show like that was built to beat four-wheel drive Berts, like, and it got to show out and show why it's effective. And I literally could not have been more excited. Like, I loved every second of it.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's just, yeah, like, I don't even have words, to be honest, because it was just incredible to see. I mean, especially since you know how much, like, looking at the other matches in the year that Witch Doctor had and how they looked in those matches, and then to just come up against Huge and face that, like, I couldn't be happier for that team, because clearly they knew what they were doing this season. They were prepared and they just executed.
Yeah, absolutely. They deserve it so many times over.
Yes. So then, and I saw a lot of commentary online of people saying that Hydra versus Ribbot was boring. What I have to say to those people is that David Jin is a freaking genius. So for, you know, I've known this not only by knowing it, but even from talking to Jake himself, that, you know, Jake talks about like this, like, hypnosis that Hydra has on people, where it doesn't matter that they know that they're going to get flipped. They just inevitably keep driving up the front of Hydra. Like, no matter that they know that that's going to happen, they just do it. And I get why that happens, but David smartly realized, hey, that's what people do, and I'm not going to do that. And so it was just a freaking standoff. And, you know, like, he was absolutely baiting Jake to be the one to do something first. And it absolutely worked 100%. And he was able to get that first hit and then just went to town on Hydra. So, I mean, for anybody that was watching that match, that's how you beat Hydra. That's exactly how you beat Hydra. So good on Ribbot.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, they say patience is a virtue, right? Like, it paid off. Like, David waited and waited, and even they were like trying to egg Jake on, like, come and get me, come and get me. But like, Jake was like, no. Like, he's literally one of the most patient people in the game. Like, he's effective because he knows what he's doing and he knows how to drive effectively. And like, as soon as David got that corner shot, I was just like, uh-oh, like, here we go. And then they like went into the wall, and I was like, oh no. Like, this is not going Hydra's way, like, by any means at this point. And like, you don't really ever see Hydra just get left in the middle of the arena like that. And it was just kind of like, oh, all right, like, Ribbot is really showing like why they deserve to be in the tournament over and over again. Like, here they are, like, showing up and showing out and showing why they've been doing it for so long and how they can be effective. And good to them. Like, congratulations for sure. That's a huge win.
Yes, absolutely. And then we have another match that obviously got me very excited, which was Copperhead versus Riptide. And I love that Luke basically said, "I'm not scared of them." And like wanted to fight Riptide, because when you know that you have a weapon that doesn't die, then you're not afraid that the other robot's going to kill it. It is much more likely that they will kill their own weapon, which is exactly what happened. So I have to, go into just a couple of things before I go into the match itself that, again, that I've seen people commenting. Some people thought it was strange that like Ethan had COVID and the rest of the team didn't. That's completely a normal thing. I can tell you, like, from being there were quite a few people that ended up getting COVID. So, like, it doesn't mean that everybody's going to test positive at the same time. That's just kind of the way that it went. And, besides that, as far as the Luke said that it wasn't going to go 3 minutes. I also liked that comment. And yeah, so the funny thing about that match was, well, I was also in the pits for that. I missed all of the good matches. But yeah, so the beginning of that match certainly didn't look as good for Copperhead. Riptide just kind of started doing what they do. But the big difference in this one is that Copperhead does not break so easily. And obviously their weapon was going full power. And unfortunately, Riptide, like, when you have a bot that hits hard, you got to recognize that that might also do some damage to your weapon. And that's what happened, and their weapon broke. I do want to add, though, that like Felix getting thrown in there to drive when he's never drove a BattleBot before, he did what I thought was a great job. I really did think so. And he deserved credit, frankly, from his captain for doing such a great job given the situation. But Copperhead ended up coming back and breaking that weapon. Obviously Copperhead did lose a wheel, but they still managed to keep moving around on the one wheel, and it went to a JD, which was originally a split decision. And I actually, like, again, the things that I find funny, that they didn't even mention the appeal. Like, it was an afterthought, really. But it was kind of a big deal in the arena. There was certainly a fan reaction to it when it happened. And then after everything was decided and the match was over, Copperhead came back to the pits to a hero's welcome. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, you could see it a little bit towards the end of the episode. They showed it, but it was just magnificent.
Yeah, it like brought me so much joy to watch Copperhead break the beater of Riptide, like without a doubt. Like we see it obviously like in the 12-pound class. Like I have friends whose like beater bars have snapped like that. And like, okay, yeah, you kind of expect that every once in a while. Like they're not using like such big weapons and thick weapons and like hard steel. And to see that thing crack and then like the rest of it just go flying apart, you're like, oh my gosh, like that weapon on Copperhead is an absolute beast, and they can just take it, and they know that if they're going to go weapon to weapon, they're going to win, and that's exactly what happened. And I wish I could have been in the pit screaming for Copperhead from the team, because like they 100% deserve that hero's welcome, especially after everything this season.
Yes, like I'm not even joking. You would have thought that they just defeated the Sith. Like that's how amazing it was. So it was, I honestly, like, this is on my list of like top 10 things that I'm like so glad that I was there for to witness. But it's Riptide is beatable. I mean, Defender beat Riptide last year. Like it's beatable. So good on Copperhead. So happy for that team. Like so happy for them. Yeah. So with that fight, we got down to our final four. And I'm happy to say all 4 teams have NHRL representation, which is just amazing. I mean, it just goes to show like the level of talent at NHRL. You know, I think that people, if people don't already watch it, they need to start watching it. So Sawblaze versus Ribbot. I think it was JMO that said, "May the best green bot win." You know, like it was such like a one of those, again, patience in the beginning, because they came out, ended up getting locked together, and then they kind of just spun around in this dance for a while. And I mean, again, I understood, because I think both of them knew that the first one that decided to move or whatever was gonna get hit. And the kill saws ended up making the decision for them, to separate, and they were able to get some separation, but it wasn't very long before we basically had Exploded Frog. And there was I'm like, Jama, why you gotta keep setting robots on fire? Like, another match where a robot catches on fire at the hands of Sawblaze. Now, this one did end up going to a judge's decision. So again, like, it just shows the durability and like the fight that Ribbot had in it to kind of try and stay in that match. But JMO had another one, and finally off to the finals.
Yeah, JMO just put on a clinic in this match. Like, he literally showed why he's so effective, why he's so prepared. Like, he takes those moves around the box and picks up Ribbot and is just like, okay, I know where I'm going to put you. I know where I'm going to deliver my shots. Like, I know that I can get deep enough in your armor, even if you've added extra. It doesn't matter to me. Like, I'm getting in there. I'm getting the stuff that matters. And, like, I'm going to make you light up on fire. And that usually will kill a robot, but again, we saw Ribbot still try to give it back to JMO, even though they were on fire. Like, that shows like how durable they are, and like they've proven a lot in this postseason. But you gotta 100% give it to JMO. Like, he's so effective. He's so smart in his driving. Like, he knows exactly what he needs to do to go into every single match. Like, especially, like, he didn't know what configuration he was going to face, but like, it didn't matter. He saw it was a vert and was like, okay, like, let's go. Like, I'm here to play, and I'm going to show why I've been working so hard, and like really like give them like the opportunity. And like, it was just such a good match.
Yes, it absolutely was. And so then we had Huge versus Copperhead. Now, Copperhead made a decision to spin their weapon backwards. I don't know if that, if that ended up being their downfall. But I mean, I think that it would have been a difficult match for them either way, because Huge, Jonathan was talking about this, that Huge has the ability to get those overhead shots that a lot of other robots can't do. And like, he had a plan, he executed it, he did it to perfection, and Copperhead was dead, which, like, you again, like, that robot does not die. So the fact that that is how the match went is just like insane to me.
Yeah, this one was absolutely like, it was like such a heart wrencher for me, because it's like, okay, what do I do here? Like, I don't know what to, like, who do I root for? I don't know. I want them both to win, but that's not how this works. So, but like, I obviously, like, I love the momentum that Huge has. Like, they are able to just snipe up, get those chains, get those belts, like, do what they need to do. And like, to see Copperhead sitting there dead in the arena, you're like, whoa, like, okay, like, bots can be killed. Like, they are there, they are breaking the meta, they are showing why they're powerful, and they are showing why they are able to be like undefeated going into the final. Like, that's insane. I again cried after this match like a little child, because like, I just get so happy for all of these teams, like, to make it so far, to put on such a good show, and like really show how much work they put in these robots, and like, to send Huge to the finals is absolutely mind-blowing, and I was so excited. Like, my Twitter is literally like, huge, I'm so excited. I was going nuts.
Yes, absolutely. Now I want to pick out like a couple of things from the little video vignette they did before the final match, because just a couple things I thought were interesting. One was that, like, I think that they led with this, but they said, like, they called the episode A Night of Controversy, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, what controversy are you talking about? Like, that's why this episode has been so great, because it hasn't had any controversy. So I just thought that that was hilarious, because I'm like, I literally don't know what they're referring to. And then that they talked a lot about the meta being broken, and I thought that that was really great to like throw that in there, because that's been such a big part of the story this season, is having these robots that don't fit that traditional meta doing so well. And I mean, that's been one of my chief like things that I've said this entire season, is they need to like talk about that more, because it's just a crazy thing. And I think that that is what gets fans more interested, is like, okay, this isn't like the same old thing that happens every year. This is something new and exciting that we can talk about.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about Craig Danby is the fact that he always builds robots outside of the meta. And like, it's literally like so innovative and so cool. And like, if you ever get a chance to see one of these BattleBots up person, like, please do it. Like, the fact that like, I obviously, like, I am super lucky and super blessed that I can see a lot of these up close and personal, like in different time periods through different events and things like that. Like, I literally just was at an event with Huge. Like, little did I know in the back of my head it was like a championship like matched robot, but like, okay. So it's just so incredible to see like all of the different designs, and like to be able to push that 4-wheel drive vertical out of the like championship match and really show like what innovation and how smart these drivers are, like, is so cool.
Yes, 100%. So that led into the final. Sawblaze versus Huge. I don't know how many people, like, there were a couple of people I saw that actually had this in their bracket, and those people are obviously either geniuses or they were there and decided to put that in their bracket. I mean, you know, when I filled mine out, I literally did it from the perspective of looking at all of the fight night matches and saying, what would I have thought was going to happen based off of these fights? And I really did think it was Minotaur's year. But you know, that being said, when I was there live and that match happened, I was like, whoever wins this match is going to win the whole thing. Like, that's what's going to happen. So JMO made some modifications for this match, which people who want to compare this to Jake's Cowcatcher, no. This is nothing like that. Like, the weapon of Sawblaze was still completely usable. You know, it just was extra armor, I guess you could say. It wasn't rendering his weapon useless. He did plenty of damage with that weapon, let me tell you. So it wasn't anything like that, but it was so smart of JMO, because I honestly believe if he had not made those changes, Huge has a giant nut right now. I believe that 100%. Because I mean, JMO was doing well, but like, Jonathan took it to him, like really took it to him. And there were different points in the match where I'm like, I think this robot's gonna win. No, I think this robot's gonna win, because it just kept changing so much. And like, it required a close-up inspection by the judges to look at the damage, if anybody wants to understand how close that fight was. So, you know, it was close, but I obviously think that, you know, the judges, they made a unanimous decision. They got the right call, and, you know, Sawblaze won the giant nut, which is amazing.
Yeah, this match was absolutely incredible. Like, I loved that it went for 3 minutes. I loved that the judges went into the cage after the fact. Like, it just goes to show you, like, how much work both teams put into their season, how durable, how effective both robots are. Like, to see Huge with like those chunks taken out of the top and bottom plates, and like and to have that attachment on Sawblaze basically be bent up and a few more hits, like that thing was popping off. It didn't matter. Like it was just such an incredible back and forth, and like congratulations to all of like everybody on Team Sawblaze. JMO, like you are fantastic. Like I am so excited, and like Jonathan, you are a class act. Like absolutely, you deserve everything this season, and it was just incredible.
Yes, yes. As I'm sure it was for you, having to watch two captains that I have so much admiration for was hard, but it was like, it was hard, but it wasn't, because I knew that no matter who won, I would be happy. Like, no matter who won, I would be happy for them. You know, and so, yeah. And I think that like another thing that I wanted to highlight is the classiness and just, you know, everything of both of them, because I think both were kind of maybe baited a little bit to say something, whatever, where JMO, you know, Chris and Kenny were kind of like trying to give him all the credit, and he's like, no, this is like, it's the whole team, like everybody does this together, everybody deserves this. And then on Jonathan's side, they asked him if he was going to appeal, and he was like, no, like the only appeal I would have made is if they said that I won. So I think that that just shows so much class, and like that the spirit that we always talk about, the community spirit, and like everybody does this together and everybody's there for each other, and like that's how it should be. And I think that that was like so well exemplified at the end of that episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the respect that those two teams have for each other is on another level.
Yes. And I have to like share, you know, JMO's quote, because I think that that's so important, when he said, don't let your dreams be dreams, make them reality. And like, again, like with NHRL and stuff, I think just the spirit of making your dreams reality is such a big thing there. There's so many people that, you know, don't have the background or whatever, they've never built a robot before, that, you know, go and like realize, hey, this is something that I can do, and this is something that's accessible to me, and I can be part of this. And I think that's such a beautiful thing, that, you know, that people can do that. And I'm glad that he said that, because I think people need to like see that and, you know, do that in their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's just cool. Like I don't even have words.
Yeah, yes, yes. Yeah, and to think all this time he's been competing at all of these NHRL events, and no one knows that he has a giant nut. They don't know that they're fighting a giant nut winner, but you know, they're going to know in June. So
I know. I wonder if he'll bring the giant nut with him in Norwalk.
I mean, if he did, I like, part of me would be so mad that that is not the event that I went to. But you know, then again, if I hadn't gone to that one, then I wouldn't have got to drive a robot, which, you know, like it's like, okay, this thing's cool, but this thing's cool, you know, I don't know, but
Oh, cool.
yeah, it's all cool, all of it. So yeah, but I incredible, like the best finals that I think I've ever seen. And that's saying a lot, you know, and it's just, it gives me a lot of hope for what BattleBots can be in the future, as long as the episodes are more like that one, and less like some of the ones earlier in the season, you know. So obviously we still have the Golden Bolt tournament coming up at some point in the future, which for anybody that's watching, yes, Ashley and I will be doing recaps for that whenever it happens. I don't know. But you know, we'll have a hiatus of BattleBots breakdown until then. But you know, obviously stay tuned, subscribe, because that's going to be the easiest way for you to know when there's more episodes of BattleBots breakdown. And you know, just keep supporting combat robotics, because I mean, I know I say it on every show, and I probably sound like a broken record by now, but I think it's such an amazing community, and it is like the perfect marriage of creativity and doing something technical. And, I think more people should get into it because it's a really cool thing. So
yeah, absolutely.
For sure. So for everybody watching, definitely was a great season. Please let me know your thoughts on the season in the comments, and we'll see everyone next time on the show.